The man stood motionless at the door, flowers trembling in his hand, breath caught between guilt and calculation. The corridor was silent, sterile. Too silent. Only the soft beeping of machines and the humming of fluorescent lights echoed faintly down the marble hallway. But inside the room behind him, a woman lay still, a life suspended between two worlds. His wife. Ryan Morgan didn't come here for love. Not today. Not ever, really. He came because appearances mattered. Because pretending to care still bought him time. Because the world hadn't caught up with the truth yet. That the accident wasn't an accident, and he wasn't a grieving husband. It was a strange kind of love story, if one could even call it that. The type whispered behind closed doors, never spoken aloud. One about a man who once loved a woman, perhaps genuinely, at some fleeting point, but loved power more. A man who leaned over the body of the woman he vowed to cherish, not to cry, not to beg her to wake, but to whisper the cruelest words he'd ever said in his life. This wasn't the first time Ryan had stood outside room 209 of the elite Seattle Neuroscience Institute. He knew the patterns on the floor tiles by now. Knew how many steps it took from the elevator to the door. Knew that if he waited too long, the nurses would come looking for him, asking if he was okay, offering sympathy he didn't want. What he didn't know, what he couldn't know, was that someone had started to listen. But we'll get to that. Ryan finally took a breath and opened the door. Evelyn lay there, as she had for weeks, her chest rising and falling with mechanical precision. Her face was still beautiful, untouched by the chaos that had nearly ended her life. She looked peaceful, serene, like she was dreaming of something better than him. The irony wasn't lost on him. He set the flowers down, lilies, her favorite, or at least he thought they were, and sat beside the bed. For a moment, he just looked at her. Then he leaned in, his voice barely above a whisper. "You know," he began, "it's kind of funny. All these people think I'm breaking inside, that I'm some devoted husband holding on to hope. But if you can hear me, Evelyn, let me make one thing clear. I'm not here because I miss you. I'm here because I'm waiting." The monitor beeped steadily in the background, the only witness to his truth. "I'm waiting for the day they tell me your brain's flatlined, for the moment they say they've done all they can. And when that day comes, I'm going to take everything you built. Your firm, your house, your last name. I'll smile at your parents, cry a little at the funeral, and then move on. Without guilt, without looking back." There was no movement, no gasp, no twitch. Just the soft hum of a ventilator and the gentle wheeze of air through her lungs. Ryan sat back, satisfied. What he didn't realize was that someone was hidden in the shadows, curled up beneath the sink cabinet in the corner of the room. A pair of bright eyes watched through a narrow slit, wide with terror. The little girl hadn't meant to eavesdrop. She had simply been playing hide-and-seek again, like she always did. But what she heard would change everything. Her name was Luna, 8 years old, a regular patient in the children's wing down the hall. Nobody noticed when she wandered. She was small, quiet, clever. Everyone adored her. Especially Dr. Carter. Dr. Elijah Carter was the kind of doctor people didn't think existed anymore. Gentle, patient, almost too good to be true. He wasn't just brilliant in medicine. He saw people, really saw them. He had taken Luna under his wing like a father would, ever since the hospital had taken her in after her last surgery. The girl had no family left. Only her imagination, a battered teddy bear, and a stubborn belief that love still meant something. It was Luna who'd started calling Evelyn Sleeping Beauty, who had asked, with wide eyes and whispered hope, whether a kiss from a prince could save someone in a coma. Dr. Carter had laughed, but also didn't dismiss it. He told her gently that sometimes people in comas can hear the world around them. That voices could matter, that love could matter. So she made it her mission to talk to Evelyn every day. She would sneak in, settle beside the bed and tell stories about the cafeteria food, about her favorite cartoons, about dreams she'd had. Once she even brought in her talking teddy bear, a toy that could record and replay her voice, and left it beside Evelyn when she couldn't stay long. No one thought much of it. A child being sweet. But today, that bear was on, recording. And everything Ryan said was now saved in its synthetic, unassuming belly. Luna didn't move. Couldn't. The things Ryan said, his tone, his hatred, it didn't sound like a bad dream. It sounded real. Too real. When he finally stood up and left, she stayed hidden until the hallway had gone quiet again. Her heart raced. Her hands trembled. She clutched her bear to her chest like it could shield her from evil. Back in the children's wing, Dr. Carter noticed Luna missing. Again. He sighed, then smiled. She always turned up eventually. But something inside him stirred with unease. Today. Ryan, meanwhile, exited the hospital with a mask of exhaustion and false grief. Evelyn's parents were in the lobby, sitting quietly, holding hands. They looked up, hopeful. "Any change?" her mother asked. He shook his head, putting just the right amount of sorrow in his eyes. "She twitched once," he lied. "Maybe a reflex. The doctor said not to get our hopes up." They nodded. Her father patted his shoulder. Ryan smiled softly and walked away, already thinking about what to do with her beachfront house in Malibu. That night, Luna waited until the nurses were asleep before tiptoeing into Dr. Carter's office, teddy bear in hand. She placed it on his desk and whispered, "You need to listen." At first, he didn't understand. But then the bear played the recording back, and everything changed. Dr. Carter stared at the bear, then at Luna, then back at the bear. He hit replay, just to be sure he heard what he thought he heard. His face went pale. Rage flickered behind his usually calm eyes. "Luna," he said carefully, "where were you when you recorded this?" "I was hiding in her room," she whispered. "I didn't mean to. I was playing, but he's evil. He said awful things. He wants her to die." Dr. Carter reached for his phone, hand trembling, but paused. This couldn't be rushed. Not yet. Not without certainty. Not without proof it was real. But he believed Luna. And more than that, he believed Evelyn. He went to her room that night and sat beside her, as he had many times before. But this time, he held her hand longer, spoke softer, played Luna's messages to her again, and watched closely for any sign, any flicker of movement, a breath caught just differently, because something was shifting. The silence between heartbeats was growing shorter. Something inside Evelyn Morgan was stirring. And soon, the world would know everything. If you want to find out what happens next, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so we can keep bringing you these powerful stories. Your support helps more than you know. Now, here's a question for you. What do you think was the biggest red flag in Ryan's behavior that Evelyn missed? A. His jealousy of her success. B. His controlling outbursts. C. His obsession with her company. D. All of the above. Let us know your answer in the comments below. There's something about hospitals in the early morning hours that feels unlike any other place on Earth. It's the silence, not just the absence of sound, but a kind of silence that breathes, a silence that watches, as though the walls themselves are listening. Luna had never felt fear in that silence before, not until now. She sat on the window ledge of her shared room in the pediatric wing, knees pulled to her chest, the teddy bear clutched tightly in her arms. The same bear that had recorded Ryan's voice the night before. The same bear that now held the darkest truth anyone in this hospital had ever heard. She hadn't slept. Couldn't. Every time she closed her eyes, she heard him again. Those words laced with venom, spoken so casually. She didn't understand everything he'd said, not fully, but she understood enough to know he wanted Evelyn gone. That he didn't love her, that he might have hurt her, that he might try again. The worst part was knowing that Evelyn couldn't defend herself. She was trapped, locked somewhere between life and death, between memory and darkness. Luna had once believed, with the pure conviction of a child, that love was enough to save someone. Now she wasn't so sure. Dr. Carter hadn't said much after she brought him the bear. He'd asked her to promise not to tell anyone else. Not yet. He said they needed time, proof, a plan. But he had held her hand longer than usual, and there was something in his eyes that scared her. Not fear, determination, and something else. Heartbreak. That morning, Dr. Carter met with Evelyn's parents in his office. He didn't mention the bear. Instead, he encouraged them, again, to speak to their daughter, to talk to her as if she could hear. He quoted studies, referenced neural pathways, used every technical term he had. But what he really meant was something simpler. "She needs to hear your voices," he said gently. "Even if she doesn't respond. Especially then." So they did. Sarah Morgan sat beside her daughter, holding Evelyn's hand in both of hers, whispering lullabies she hadn't sung since childhood. Her father, Michael, read aloud from an old book of poems. They didn't know if Evelyn heard them, but she did. Somewhere deep in the quiet of her mind, Evelyn floated. She wasn't aware of time, not in any real sense, but she was aware of warmth, of light flickering in and out, of voices, familiar, comforting, like echoes from a dream. Sometimes they spoke gently, other times they cried. But always, they reminded her of something important. She was loved. And then there was another voice. "You're a pain in the ass. Got it? When are you going to die?" The words sliced through the fog like a blade. She tried to run, tried to scream, but there was no voice, no body. Just her, suspended in thought, in fear. The voice came again, colder this time. "Even if you open your eyes, you won't be the same. Miracles don't happen, Evelyn. Not for you." She didn't know how long she drifted in that space, tormented by shadows of a man she once trusted. But eventually, another voice returned. Higher, softer. "I believe in you. I brought you my teddy bear. He records what I say, just like a parrot. You're not alone, Evelyn. You're never alone." The sound steadied her. It wasn't a dream. It was real. Someone real. A girl. Luna. At the same time, Dr. Carter moved carefully. He didn't take the recording to the police yet. Not because he doubted Luna, but because he knew how easily these things could be dismissed. He needed to be certain. Needed a response. So he returned to Evelyn's room that evening, alone, carrying a small portable speaker. "I want to try something," he said softly as if she could hear. "Just you and me now." He pressed play. Luna's voice poured through the room, sweet and unsure, telling a story about a dream she had, a castle in the sky, a night made of starlight, and a princess who couldn't wake up until she remembered who she was. Evelyn's brain scan remained steady at first. Then, a flicker. Slight, but there. Dr. Carter repeated the test. More flickers. Small surges of neural activity in response to the child's voice. He stared at the screen, then at Evelyn. "You're still in there, aren't you?" Later that week, he invited Luna to help with a new routine. She'd come to Evelyn's room each afternoon and read stories or sing. She was shy at first but grew braver every day, and Evelyn responded. Not with words, not yet, but her heart rate changed. Her fingers twitched. The machine didn't lie. Luna started decorating Evelyn's room with drawings, sketches of fairy tale castles, of flowers, of sunrises. Dr. Carter added soft lights around the headboard. Evelyn's parents brought in framed photos from her childhood. A new environment, they hoped, could trigger familiar feelings. And perhaps the will to return. One evening, Luna came in carrying a small folder. I made you blueprints, she whispered to Evelyn, for the castle you'll build when you wake up. She spread out the papers on the windowsill, childish, uneven lines forming towers and bridges and moats. But it was heartfelt. She believed in Evelyn, more than anyone else did. That night, Ryan returned. Dr. Carter had been hoping he wouldn't. But the man was too proud, too confident in his role as the grieving husband. He entered the room with practiced sorrow, placed a new bouquet by the bed, and sat. He didn't see the small camera now embedded in the corner of the room. He didn't know the machine beside Evelyn was being monitored remotely. He didn't know. Dr. Carter was watching, but Ryan, as always, was reckless. You know, he muttered as he leaned in, I don't know how much longer I can keep this up. Everyone keeps asking me how I'm holding up. Maybe I'll just say what I really feel one day. He chuckled to himself, then grew quiet. You're never going to wake up. And if you do, it'll be a miracle. A sad, broken miracle. Because you won't remember. You won't be you. He paused, biting his lip. You were always too ambitious, Evelyn. Always building, leading, achieving. You didn't know how to stop. Didn't know when to give in. That's why we're here. You wouldn't let go. And maybe I made sure you couldn't hold on. The words chilled the air. The heart. Monitor skipped. Ryan stood abruptly, shaking off whatever emotion had crept in. Anyway, I'll be back next week, unless something changes. He left without noticing the slight twitch in Evelyn's hand, without realizing he'd been heard, not just by the machines, but by a mind waking from sleep. In the days that followed, Evelyn's progress accelerated. She showed increasing signs of responsiveness. Her eyes fluttered more often. Her reflexes returned. Dr. Carter updated her family daily, growing more hopeful with each passing hour. But he didn't tell them everything. Not yet. He needed one more piece. He began building a case quietly, reviewing visitor logs, cross-referencing security footage, digging into the police report from the night of the crash. There were gaps, inconsistencies. He requested the dashcam footage. It was missing. The officers who responded that night, no longer on the force. But Dr. Carter had one thing Ryan didn't anticipate. A child with courage and a bear with a memory. Soon it would be enough. That weekend, Luna came to visit Evelyn again. This time, Evelyn's eyes opened, briefly, but unmistakably. Luna gasped, then smiled so wide her face could barely contain it. She looked at me, Luna whispered to Dr. Carter later. She saw me. I know it. Dr. Carter nodded, his voice thick. She did, Luna. She really did. The silence that had haunted the White Room for so long was beginning to break. Whispers were becoming voices. And Evelyn Morgan, brilliant, resilient Evelyn, was coming back. Next time, she wouldn't just hear the truth. She would speak it, and when she did, everything would change. The human mind, even while unconscious, has strange ways of remembering. Some things return in fragments. A sound, a scent, the outline of a face. Other memories drift just beyond reach, like shadows behind a curtain. Evelyn Morgan, still trapped somewhere between worlds, began to feel the edges of herself sharpening. She didn't understand it at first. Her mind had been quiet for so long. A heavy fog had wrapped her in silence. But now she could feel it thinning. Something was pulling her forward. It wasn't the voices of her parents, though they stirred warmth in her chest when she heard them. It wasn't Dr. Carter's calm, steady reassurance, though his presence felt like a lighthouse guiding her. It was the voice of a little girl. Curious, kind, honest. That voice had weight. That voice had intention. Luna didn't just speak to Evelyn. She believed in her. She believed she was still alive in there. And that belief, in its purest, most unshakable form, was a lifeline Evelyn hadn't even known she needed. Dr. Carter had seen enough. The readings were clear. Evelyn was reacting, subtly, slowly, but undeniably. He documented the spikes in neural activity each time Luna visited. He noted the patterns, how Evelyn's fingers twitched slightly when the girl laughed, how her heart rate adjusted when Luna told stories about her day. This wasn't coincidence. This was cognition. And most of all, this was hope. It was time to act. Dr. Carter arranged a formal neurological assessment using auditory stimulation exercises. While Evelyn's parents waited anxiously outside her room, he began by playing Luna's recorded messages once again. This time, Evelyn's brainwaves showed stronger, more stable patterns. Then, Carter played other familiar voices, her mother's, her father's. But the results weren't the same. Evelyn's strongest neural responses, again and again, were triggered by Luna. He recorded it all. After the session, he found Luna in the playroom, quietly sketching a house with too many windows. "How's your castle coming along?" he asked. "It's finished," Luna said without looking up. "But I want to build a new one. This one will be for all the people Evelyn saves when she wakes up." Dr. Carter smiled gently, but inside, he ached. Children carried hope differently than adults. They didn't question its limits. They just gave it away. He sat down beside her and placed a hand on the teddy bear. "You remember what this little guy recorded?" Luna nodded, suddenly serious. "Need you to help me again," he said. "But this time, it might be harder. Okay? What do you want me to do?" Dr. Carter hesitated, searching for the right words. "I want you to bring him back. The man. Ryan. I want him to come into the room and talk. I want you to be there. Hidden. Like before." Luna's eyes widened. "You want him to say those mean things again?" "I want to make sure," Carter said softly, "that it wasn't just something he said once. We need to know who he really is. And the bear has to hear it." She was quiet for a long time, then finally nodded. "Okay. But I want Evelyn to know I'm there too." "She already does," he said. "More than you know." 2 days later, Ryan returned. He didn't suspect anything. As far as he knew, Evelyn's progress was stagnant. Her condition was still uncertain, as Dr. Carter had phrased it. The perfect cover for a man who still thought he had time to outlast the consequences of his choices. He entered the room, adjusted his tie in the window reflection, and gave his usual sigh of fake exhaustion. He pulled up the chair beside Evelyn and leaned forward. He never noticed Luna, curled behind the curtain, hidden beneath a blanket and a rolling supply cart. The teddy bear, propped on a nearby shelf, blinked silently. "You really don't make this easy," Ryan muttered. "I mean, I've played the grieving husband long enough, haven't I? Everyone thinks I'm some damn hero." He scoffed, lowering his voice. "But you were never supposed to make it this far. You were supposed to die on that road. That was the plan. One wrong turn, a little panic, a few tears for the officers, and then freedom." Luna held her breath. "You made it so hard, Evelyn," Ryan continued. Even in a coma, you're still controlling everything. The company's frozen. The accounts are monitored. Your damn parents are sniffing around every corner. And I have to stand here every week like I give a damn." He stood up suddenly, pacing the room. "You know what the worst part is? If you wake up, I'm screwed. You'll remember. Maybe not everything, but enough. That's the thing about you. You never forget." He leaned over her, whispering now, "Please, just die. Just let go. Let me have the life I deserve." Then he left, just as quickly as he came. He didn't look back. He didn't notice the teddy bear's soft red light fading. He didn't notice the slight, almost imperceptible twitch in Evelyn's foot. But Luna noticed. She waited 5 minutes before she moved. She crawled out from her hiding place and climbed onto the chair next to Evelyn, gripping her hand. "I heard it," she whispered. "I recorded it all. I'm going to help you." That night, she gave the bear to Dr. Carter. They sat in his office and listened to the full recording. No gaps, no ambiguity. This time, Ryan had crossed every line. There was no question now. What had once been suspicion was now evidence, and Evelyn's body was proving the mind inside it was listening. Still, Carter hesitated. He needed more than just a recording. He needed corroboration. He needed action that aligned with the intent. And for that, he would have to pull a dangerous string. He contacted a private investigator the hospital occasionally used for difficult patient-family legal cases. Within 48 hours, the investigator uncovered enough. Missing dashcam footage, mismatched statements between the responding officers, an unusual financial transfer to a retired highway patrolman. Ryan's hands were dirty, and now Carter had the file to prove it. Meanwhile, Evelyn continued to stir. The fog in her mind had begun to break into pieces, and with it came fragments of memory. Not just voices now, but images. A dark road, the rain on the windshield, the way Ryan had yelled, the way she had screamed, and then silence, but underneath it all, Luna, reading, talking, laughing, a voice she didn't know she loved until it became her anchor. She started responding more visibly, a full hand flex, a tilt of the head. One evening, she opened her eyes, for several seconds before falling back into unconsciousness. Her parents cried when they saw it. Luna nearly dropped her sketchbook in surprise. Dr. Carter knew time was running out. Ryan would visit again soon, and he couldn't be allowed to keep walking in and out of her life without consequence. He called Evelyn's parents into his office and told them everything. Not the child's involvement, not yet, but everything else. The recording, the evidence, the private investigation. At first, they were stunned, then horrified, then angry. Her father wanted to call the police immediately. "Not yet," Dr. Carter said. "We need him to come again. One last time. I'll have the officers here. Quiet, out of sight, but ready." That night, for the first time in weeks, Evelyn opened her eyes fully and kept them open. Luna was the first to see her. The girl didn't scream, didn't cry. She just walked to the side of the bed, took Evelyn's hand and said, "You came back." And Evelyn whispered, voice raspy but certain, "I followed your voice." There was a stillness in Evelyn's room that felt different now. Not the hollow, haunting stillness that once wrapped itself around her silence, but something more alert, something alive, as if the walls themselves had begun to listen differently. The machine still beeped, but there was new rhythm in the air. Her body, once so still and unreachable, now shifted gently beneath the covers. Her eyes opened longer each day. Her grip, once lifeless, had grown stronger. The doctors called it recovery. Luna called it magic. But Dr. Carter knew better. It was truth. Truth had been the only medicine Evelyn had needed. Truth and time. and love, though not the kind that Ryan Morgan had pretended to offer. What had cracked open Evelyn's silence wasn't a miracle. It was a child's unwavering belief, a doctor's relentless pursuit of justice, and the weight of secrets that could no longer stay hidden. Dr. Carter stood at the edge of Evelyn's room and watched her mother, Sarah, braid her daughter's hair slowly, gently. Evelyn's eyes were half open, still tired, but focused now. Present. Her father sat nearby, reading from one of her favorite poetry books, though his voice cracked with every stanza. The family was holding their breath, not in fear anymore, but in awe, in cautious hope. Evelyn couldn't speak yet, but her eyes told stories. They followed voices, flickered with emotion, glistened with tears when Luna entered the room and laid her latest drawing by the bed. A little girl with a golden crown, a woman with a long braid holding her hand, and a tall man in a white coat standing behind them. Above them, Luna had scrawled, "We're not waiting anymore. We're building." Carter swallowed back a lump in his throat when he saw it. The time for waiting had passed. Now came the reckoning. He had arranged everything in secret. The surveillance footage from Ryan's previous visits had been compiled. The recordings Luna had captured on her teddy bear were now in the hands of the police. The private investigator had traced the financial trail from Ryan's accounts to the former patrol officer who'd responded the night of the crash. The evidence was thorough. It was irrefutable. But the moment of confrontation had to be exact, clean, controlled. Carter wasn't interested in revenge. He wanted Ryan to unravel himself, to show the world who he truly was. And he needed Evelyn's final confirmation to make the case airtight. She gave it to him with a blink. 3 blinks for yes, 1 blink for no. That was the system they had started using once her body grew strong enough. And when Carter sat by her side and asked if she remembered the night of the crash, her eyes blinked slowly. Once, twice, 3 times. Yes. Did Ryan grab the wheel? He asked, barely above a whisper. 3 blinks. Yes. Did he say cruel things to you before it happened? Yes. Do you remember being afraid? Her eyes brimmed, but she blinked. Yes. That night, Carter brought in 2 detectives from Seattle PD, both seasoned, quiet professionals with calm demeanors and sharp instincts. They listened to the evidence, the audio files. They read the accident report, the hospital records, the transcripts from Evelyn's early neural tests. And when they were done, they asked Carter only one question. When's he coming back? Carter told them, Thursday. Ryan always visited on Thursdays. It was when Evelyn's parents took their walk in the rose garden, a routine he used to appear considerate, to protect the illusion. But this Thursday would be different. The room was staged with precision. The surveillance equipment was in place, hidden behind a medical supply cabinet. The audio system was rigged with an additional mic near the window. Evelyn had been prepped in advance, her breathing supported but not forced, her monitor stable. She was ready. The detectives waited in Carter's office, just a few doors down. Evelyn's parents were briefed but asked to remain outside. They agreed, though with great difficulty. Luna, however, was allowed to stay. Not in the room, but just beyond the glass window in the hallway, clutching her sketchbook like a shield. And then, right on time, Ryan arrived. He wore a dark navy coat and a black button-up shirt. His expression was somber, convincing as ever. He gave the front desk nurse a polite nod and walked the now familiar corridor without a single glance to either side. At the door, he paused, like he always did, took a long breath, then entered. Evelyn lay still, her eyes closed. She wasn't pretending, not exactly. But she understood this moment mattered. She needed to listen. Ryan walked to her bedside, placed his flowers on the table, and sat. You look the same, he said softly, shaking his head. Unreal. Like you're frozen. In time. He leaned forward, pressing his elbows onto his knees. I've been thinking, Evelyn, about how this ends. His voice dropped lower, darker. I didn't plan to say this today, but I'm tired. I'm tired of pretending. Tired of showing up here every week like a damn puppet. Your parents, God, they cling to this fantasy that you'll walk out of here one day. That you'll be you again. But I know better. He stood now, pacing slowly. You'll wake up different. That's if you wake up at all. And if you do, you'll tell them everything, won't you? You'll twist the story. Make me the monster. He stopped at the foot of the bed and stared at her. But you don't get to win, Evelyn. Not this time. In the hallway, Luna gripped her pencil so tightly it snapped in half. Ryan sat again, and this time his face contorted into something closer to honesty. Not grief, not guilt, contempt. I loved you once, maybe. But then I realized what I really loved was your world, your name, your money, your power. And I knew I'd never have it if you were still here. So yeah, I took a chance. I told the cops you screamed, that you grabbed the wheel. I even cried. They believed me, because I was the husband. The man. That's how this works. He smiled bitterly. But I guess I underestimated you. He rose to leave, and that's when the door opened. Dr. Carter entered first, eyes calm, clipboard in hand. Behind him came the two detectives, badges out, voices firm. Ryan Morgan, one of them said, you're under arrest for attempted murder, obstruction of justice, bribery, and conspiracy. Ryan blinked, confused. Then rage exploded across his face. What the hell is this? You can't do this. She can't even talk. But she can. Listen, Carter said. And she remembers? Ryan lunged for the door, but the officers grabbed him. He shouted as they cuffed him, kicked, screamed. Evelyn's name left his lips like a curse. You think you're better than me? He shouted, at the unconscious woman. You think this changes anything? But Evelyn's eyes opened. Not slowly, not hesitantly. Wide, focused. And for the first time, Ryan Morgan saw the consequence of his actions staring back at him. The officers dragged him out. Silence fell again, but it was different this time. Not heavy, not haunted, peaceful, cleansing. Doctor. Carter stepped to Evelyn's side and whispered, You did it. She blinked 3 times. Yes. That night, Sarah and Michael returned to her room and wept with relief. They kissed her hands, her cheeks, her forehead. Carter sat with them, holding back tears of his own. Outside the room, Luna traced the moment in her sketchbook. A door opening. A man dragged away. A princess rising. By morning, news of Ryan's arrest had broken across several media outlets. The headlines told a story of betrayal and bravery, of hidden tapes and recovered memories, of a woman who came back from the edge to tell the truth. But none of them knew about the little girl who'd listened when no one else did, or the doctor who believed without evidence, or the quiet strength that had slowly bloomed in a hospital, room filled with whispers. Evelyn slept soundly that night, and for the first time in weeks, her dreams were quiet, because justice had finally spoken. The sky outside Evelyn's hospital window was the softest shade of blue, the kind that comes just after a storm, when the air is still thick with memory, but the light has finally broken through. She watched it now with a quiet stillness, the same stillness that had once trapped her between 2 worlds, but now held her gently, reminding her that she had returned. She had been home for 3 weeks. Home was no longer the place she remembered, with sharp angles and shadows. It had changed. Her apartment had been cleaned out, repainted, renewed. The photographs had returned to the walls, The light fixtures had been replaced. But more than that, the feeling had shifted. It wasn't just hers anymore. It was theirs. Luna was in the kitchen, trying to spread peanut butter on toast without it tearing. Her face twisted with concentration, the tip of her tongue peeking out, and Evelyn smiled at the sight of her. Her daughter. It wasn't official on paper yet, but names didn't always matter. What mattered was the way Luna had chosen her long, before Evelyn could speak, and how Evelyn, once she could move again, had chosen her right back. She was walking now, slowly but steadily. Her voice returned gradually, fragile at first, then stronger. Every day she trained, physical therapy, in the mornings, vocal therapy in the afternoons. But it wasn't just her body she was rebuilding. It was her life, from the ground up. The trial had ended a week earlier. Ryan Morgan had been convicted of attempted murder, obstruction of justice, bribery, and criminal negligence. His lawyers tried to paint him as overwhelmed, heartbroken, mentally unstable. But the jury had listened to the recordings. They had seen Evelyn's testimony, watched the video footage, heard Luna's voice echo through that teddy bear. No one had doubted. Not for a moment. Evelyn hadn't attended the sentencing in person. She didn't need to. Closure, for her, hadn't come in a courtroom. It had come in the quiet moments, in the way her father's hand trembled as he signed the adoption paperwork, in the way her mother brushed Luna's curls like she'd done it all her life, in the way Dr. Carter's voice softened when he said goodnight at the door, as though reluctant to leave. She thought of him often. He still worked at the hospital, of course. But things between them had changed. There was a warmth between their silences now. A tension not born of fear or obligation, but something deeper. Something neither of them dared name too soon. And yet, the way his eyes lingered on her when she smiled, the way he always remembered Luna's favorite juice, the way his hand rested lightly on her back when he helped her into a chair. Those gestures said everything. She didn't rush it. She wasn't building a life out of desperation or need. She was building it like an architect would, carefully, with intention, stone by stone. That morning, she and Luna visited the hospital one last time, not as patients, but as guests. They brought a box of muffins and a hand-drawn card. The nurses wept when they saw her walk in on her own. Some hugged her too tightly. Others stepped back in disbelief. Evelyn greeted each one with grace, knowing that they had been the unseen hands that kept her alive long before she knew to ask. They stopped by the children's wing, where Luna had once slipped through corridors like a ghost, carrying secrets no one could see. Now she was introduced as Evelyn's daughter. She beamed at the title, as if it were a crown. "I want to help the other kids now," she told the nurses, "the ones who feel scared. I want to talk to them like I talked to Evelyn." One of the younger nurses knelt to her level. "You already helped more than you'll ever know." They left the muffins in the break room and made their way to Dr. Carter's office. He stood when they entered, smiling in that quiet way of his, as though the sight of them made something settle inside him. "Thought I heard the sound of mischief coming down the hall," he said. "I wasn't sneaking around," Luna said, lifting her chin. "I walked like a real lady today." "I saw," he replied, placing a hand over his heart. "I'm honored." He turned to Evelyn, and for a long moment, they just looked at each other. She had changed. There was still tiredness in her eyes, a shadow that hadn't fully left. But there was something stronger beneath it. A fire. A kind of peace that comes not from forgetting the pain, but from surviving it. "I brought something for you," she said, reaching into her bag and handing him a slim folder. He opened it slowly, eyes scanning the contents. His breath caught. "These are building plans," he said, voice hushed. "For a new pediatric wing?" "Yes," she said. I want to fund it. Design it. Name it after the children who don't have names in the system. Kids like Luna. Kids who go unseen until they find someone who listens. Dr. Carter didn't speak for a moment. Then he looked at Luna and said, "Do you want to help us build it?" Her eyes went wide. "Can I paint the walls?" "Only if you promise to let me help," he replied. They laughed together, and Evelyn felt her chest tighten, not with sadness, but with a kind of awe. This was what rebuilding looked like. It wasn't grand speeches or dramatic gestures. It was one kind voice, one open door, one child's drawing taped to a wall. Weeks passed, then months. Evelyn's firm reopened with a new board, her name still on the door, but no longer standing alone. She changed the structure, shared power, elevated young women into leadership positions, and for the first time, the company reflected not just her ambition, but her values. She spoke at conferences, not about architecture, but about survival, about what it meant to be heard when your voice had been taken, about the danger of subtle manipulation and the heroism of children who believe in fairy tales. Luna sat in the front row every time. Eventually, the papers were signed. The adoption finalized. Luna became Luna Morgan Flynn, a name she wrote in glitter pen across every notebook. And not long after that, Dr. Carter stopped leaving after dinner. His coat hung on the back of Evelyn's kitchen chair now. His toothbrush rested beside hers. One morning, Luna woke to find the two of them dancing in the living room, barefoot, no music, just a slow rhythm between hearts that had learned to trust again. 2 years later, Evelyn gave birth to a son. They named him Miles. Luna held him first, her eyes wide with something like reverence. Then she whispered, "Don't worry, I'll teach you everything, like how to hide under beds, and how to listen to secrets, and how to believe in magic." He gurgled in response. They laughed, all of them, wrapped in that impossible moment. It didn't erase the pain. It didn't undo the past. But it offered something better, a future made by choice, not fear. Luna's teddy bear, the one that had changed everything, was never returned. It remained in evidence storage, its voice recorder preserved as part of the trial archive. But Evelyn had a replica made. This one didn't record anything. It only whispered pre-recorded lullabies when pressed. Still, Luna kept it by her pillow. "Just in case," she said. "Because even when you grow up, some things are worth believing in. Stories don't always end the way they begin. Some begin in silence and end in song. Some begin in betrayal and end in love. Some begin with a woman in a coma and a child with no family, and end with a new name, a new home, and a castle drawn in crayon on a refrigerator. But this story, this one, was never about just a villain or a victim. It was about the strength of being seen, the courage to speak, and the quiet miracle of one little girl who listened when no one else could. The silence between heartbeats had been filled at last. And now, the rhythm of life played on. There are stories we hear that entertain us, stories that make us laugh, stories that scare us. But once in a while, a story comes along that doesn't just pass through us. It changes us. It lingers. It asks us to reflect, to question, to look deeper into the mirror. This was one of those stories. Evelyn Morgan's life began as many do, with ambition, love, and a belief in the goodness of people. She was brilliant, driven, and compassionate, a woman who led with grace in the world of architecture and leadership. When she met Ryan Morgan, he seemed like the kind of man who saw beyond the surface. He didn't come from wealth or status, but he came with charm, ambition, and just enough vulnerability to feel real. For a time, their love seemed sincere. It bloomed in boardrooms, over quiet dinners, in late-night conversations about building a life together. But love that isn't grounded in truth has a way of rotting from the inside. And Ryan, slowly and quietly, began to resent the very qualities he once admired in Evelyn. Her success, her power, her independence. Instead of being inspired by her strength, he felt eclipsed by it. His ego didn't want to walk beside her. It wanted to be above her. The marriage deteriorated, not with a bang, but with cold silences, biting remarks, and eventually, violent control. And then one night, during a drive meant to be just another argument behind closed car doors, Ryan made a decision that nearly ended her life. A twist of the steering wheel, a false story to the police, a bribe to make it all go away. Evelyn entered a coma, suspended in a place where time didn't move, where she couldn't speak, couldn't fight, couldn't defend herself. The world outside went on spinning. Ryan playing the grieving husband, her parents hoping, the doctors working. But beneath the stillness, Evelyn's mind was listening, remembering, waiting. Then came Luna, an 8-year-old orphan who had already survived far more than her age should allow. She came to Evelyn's room not out of duty or instruction, but from pure belief that even Sleeping Beauty needed a friend. Luna talked to Evelyn daily. She brought her stories, drawings, laughter, and hope. And when the darkness re-entered the room in the form of Ryan's whispered cruelty, it was Luna who heard it. It was Luna who recorded it. The toy bear that captured. Ryan's confession wasn't just a plot device. It became a symbol of how truth often hides in the quietest corners, waiting to be noticed. Dr. Elijah Carter was the man who finally noticed. He was the one adult who listened to Luna's voice without skepticism, who believed her story without proof, who took her seriously when most would have dismissed her. Together, they built a case not just in court, but in Evelyn's body and soul. They built a bridge back to her. The turning point came when Evelyn's mind responded, not just biologically, but emotionally. She blinked. She remembered. She identified the man who had nearly stolen her life. And when Ryan was finally arrested, it wasn't the roar of justice that broke him. It was the realization that the woman he tried to silence had found a way to speak. But the story didn't end there. Evelyn chose to heal, not to forget, but to rebuild. She adopted Luna, giving the girl the home she had always longed for. She reignited her architectural firm, not as a monument to success, but as a platform for empowerment. She began designing new pediatric spaces, places that didn't just treat bodies, but honored spirits, especially the small, unspoken ones like Luna's. And quietly, over time, she and Dr. Carter fell into a love that didn't ask for power, but offered partnership. Together, they welcomed a son, Miles, a child born not into a broken story, but into a new one. From the outside, Evelyn's story looks extraordinary. It is. But what makes it most remarkable is not the tragedy she endured. It's the grace with which she came back. She didn't return with vengeance. She didn't seek to destroy what had hurt her. Instead, she chose to build. Not just homes and hospitals, but hope. So, what do we take from this? What is the lesson buried beneath the betrayal, the coma, the courtroom? It is this: the smallest voice can carry the deepest truth. Luna was a child with no status, no credentials, no authority, but she changed everything. She listened, she believed, she acted. Her presence reminded everyone that courage is not always loud. Sometimes it's crouched under a hospital bed, gripping a teddy bear, daring to believe in fairy tales. Dr. Carter reminds us of the power of stillness and consistency, of showing up, listening, trusting your instincts, and protecting those who can't protect themselves. Evelyn's arc is one of transcendent resilience. She could have emerged bitter, hardened, disconnected. But instead, she met life again with open hands. She reached for love. She made a new family. She allowed herself to grieve, but not to be defined by her pain. In a world that often prizes volume over substance, this story reminds us that strength can look like stillness, that recovery is not a sprint, but a sacred rebuilding, that justice, when paired with compassion, doesn't just punish, it restores, and most of all, it teaches us this: you are not the worst thing that happened to you. You are who you become after it. So how do we apply this to our lives? First, by listening deeply. Not just to those who speak loudly, but to those who whisper, to children, to the vulnerable, to those we might be inclined to overlook. Second, by acting. When you know something is wrong, say something. Do something. Don't underestimate the power of your small gesture. It might save someone. Third, by healing. Whether you've been hurt, betrayed, overlooked, or silenced, know this: you have the right to rebuild. You have the right to find your voice again. You have the right to choose softness after surviving hardness. And finally, by believing, not just in others, but in yourself, in your ability to rise, to move, to make something new. Because every day, people like Evelyn rise from comas we cannot see. People like Luna speak truth into a world that doesn't always listen. People like Carter quietly protect those who are too fragile to stand alone. That is real strength. That is real love. That is what makes stories like this more than fiction. They become mirrors. They become blueprints for us to follow. So now, we want to hear from you. What part of Evelyn and Luna's journey spoke to you the most? Was it the courage to speak? The grace to forgive? The silent strength of listening? Was it the idea of rebuilding life after betrayal? Or simply the hope that justice still finds a way? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your perspective might be the voice someone else needs to hear today. And if this story moved you, even just a little, subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us continue to share meaningful stories, true or fictional, that remind us of what really matters: compassion, truth, and the enduring power of hope. Until the next story, stay kind, stay strong, and remember, even the quietest voices can change everything